Welcome dear students and welcome to the 60th session of the KIPS Distance Learning Program Current Affairs Newspaper Roundup session. I am your host Shahrukh Haider and today we're going to discuss a very hot topic that has been going on in the news, taking rounds all over social media and especially in the education circles in Pakistan. So the topic is, what are the prospects, challenges and demerits of a uniform curriculum in Pakistan's education system? This is a very interesting topic naturally because we haven't really tried that in the past, but there is a need of such a mechanism due to multiple reasons that we will discuss later on. But naturally, implementation of such a massive and ambitious program is extremely difficult and challenges are manifold. So let's begin. First of all, what is a uniform curriculum? So uniform curriculum is a set of rules and procedures and course material and the way that school classes are organized and examinations are conducted. All of that will be implemented equally and in the same way all around the country in all three different kinds of educational systems in Pakistan, that is the public education system, the madrasa system and the private education system. So a single way of education will be implemented in all three forms of educational systems in Pakistan. So why do we need it? Well, there are multiple reasons for that as well. But first of all, as Prime Minister Imran Khan has said time and again that Pakistan has an education apartheid where the people who go to the private schools, the elite private schools especially, get the highest and the most lucrative access to opportunity as compared to the madrasa students. And there's a very big diversity among the graduates of private schools and madrasa schools and obviously the public schooling system as well. And this inequality in education directly creates inequality in employment later on and in access to opportunity and in the quality of life that these people spend. Now that is unfair. It is the state's responsibility to ensure that every individual, every citizen has equal or at least equitable access to opportunity to improve their lives and to spend the kind of life that they want to spend. Secondly, the private education system has created a lot of problems in Pakistan because most of it imports foreign education systems that are not really compatible with Pakistan's local government and non-government systems and institutional networks and structures, which is why a lot of people who at least in the elite education, private education schools go, they usually leave the country, and when they leave the country for higher education and for pursuing employment opportunities, they do a big discredit to their own country, a big damage to their own country, and that is exactly what the process of brain drain is. So the private schooling system in Pakistan, by implementing foreign curricula and foreign education systems, are facilitating brain drain in Pakistan, which is a big problem because all of the talented, educated and bright, brilliant minds leave Pakistan before they could even contribute to the economy, society and culture of Pakistan. Now, what are the prospects of a uniform curriculum? Well, at least as Prime Minister Imran Khan has said, it would at least attempt to end the education apartheid in Pakistan, the inequality to the quality of education, the standard of education, and ultimately to the standard of life that those individuals spend. By having a single uniform curriculum throughout the country in all educational institutes, irrespective of how expensive or cheap they are, that would ensure, at least on paper, that all students around the country undergo the same kind of educational training, therefore they have the same kind of access to opportunity and employment opportunities later on in their lives. Secondly, it would definitely create equality among the different socio-economic stratas or classes in Pakistan and create a bit of unity because everyone would undergo the same kind of education system. Thirdly, there is a lot of focus on Islamic education and Quranic education in the uniform curriculum that is being designed. And that focus is good in my honest opinion because more and more Islamic education and Islamic values would bring more morality and virtues into our society and reduce a lot of vices and sins that are committed in our society regularly, such as violence against women, sexual exploitation of women perhaps, and many other problems that I'm sure you are more familiar with than I am. So thirdly, what are the demerits of a uniform curriculum? Well, first of all, a uniform curriculum would most definitely suppress the diversity of ideas, of concepts, of opinions, and of inventions all around Pakistan, because everyone, all of the students, all of the young generation of Pakistan would be put in the same mold to create the same kind of final product, and that would be very bad for the diversity of ideas, innovation, and concepts that is needed for research, for development, for progress, for socio-economic prosperity. Secondly, it would reduce the variety of competition in Pakistan, where everyone would be expected and exposed to the same kind of competition with each other, and that would really not be an encouraging factor, because the greater is the variety of diversity, the more people compete to basically win over each other. Thirdly, since there is a uniform curriculum, it would most definitely be implemented in at least majority of it will be implemented in two languages, which is Urdu and English, and that would dramatically impact the scope, the nature, and the prevalence and the vibrance of local languages all around the country. If we talk about the mainstream languages, that would be Pahari, Pashto, Sindhi, Balochi, Saraiki. These languages would be adversely affected by a uniform education curriculum that would be implemented in primarily two languages. So if the authorities at the center want to create a more inclusive uniform education, they need to integrate the local languages as much as they can and make them compulsory throughout the education of schooling. And finally, due to the threat to the language that a uniform curriculum will pose, it will directly also pose threat to the identities of people around the world of different ethnic backgrounds, and that might create feelings of anti-Pakistan sentiment, which are already prevalent in a lot of people in Pakistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in FATA, and especially in Balochistan. So what are the challenges that if a uniform curriculum is implemented in Pakistan, what kind of challenges would it face? Well, first of all, there is a very powerful and a very rich private school mafia operating in Pakistan that would never allow the government to intervene so directly into their schooling system by completely overhauling their curriculum and imposing forcibly a uniform national curriculum. They would never allow that, they would never accept that, and they would fight tooth and crook to make sure that their foreign agendas and their foreign curriculum are still implemented and followed in their schools. You might have heard of a recent case where the private schools were taken to the Supreme Court by the Association of Parents, who accused them of arbitrarily increasing the fees on an annual basis and having exorbitant and extremely expensive and unreal fees of private education systems. And although the Supreme Court gave the verdict that they are only allowed to increase their fees annually by 5%, they have still not complied by that, because they are a powerful lobby in Pakistan and they have a lot of influence in the assemblies, in the Senate. They have people sitting there. So that would be perhaps the number one threat to imposing a uniform curriculum, especially in the private education sector. Secondly, in order to implement such a huge mammoth project, you need massive amounts of resources and massive investment into the education. Right now, our education budget is 2.4% of our GDP, which is very low compared to other countries in the region and in the world. There are countries in the world who dedicate as much as 20% of their GDP to the education sector, but we only dedicate 2.4%, and in recent years it has reduced even below to 1.8%. So we simply do not have the resources, or at least we are not willing to invest those resources into the education sector which are required for the proper implementation of a national uniform curriculum. Thirdly, in order to implement a uniform curriculum and make teachers own it, we need teacher training all around the country of millions of teachers in public education sector, in private education sector, and in the madrasa education services as well. And that task in itself is perhaps too big to accomplish in such a short amount of time. It would require a decade perhaps to bring all of the teaching staff in Pakistan on board the concept and the train of a national uniform curriculum. Where we would get the resources and the necessary political will for that is a question that is left unanswered, at least until now. Fourthly, we would also have to replace all of the printed material, books, notes and everything that is used in the schools with completely new printed books, and those books would amount to millions because there are many students in Pakistan at the school level, and that project in itself, printing millions upon millions of new books, course material, is extremely expensive, time consuming and very hard to accomplish, and will definitely be a big challenge for implementation of a uniform curriculum. And finally, the uniform curriculum also envisages the restructuring of nearly 80,000 madrasas in Pakistan. How would you be able to achieve that unbelievably difficult and huge task with the very meager resources that you have at your disposal? I mean, the madrasa system is extremely different from the regular formal education system, and in order to implement a national curricula, you would have to substantially restructure the madrasas, all of them, to make them able to implement a national level curricula that includes not just religious education, which is what the madrasa system almost exclusively focuses on, but also scientific, mathematical, practical education. So these challenges are very stark, and at least they point to a gloomy reality that perhaps a single national curriculum is not possible in Pakistan, at least now or in a few years, and this is perhaps just a political gimmick that the PTI government is using to create public support for its policies. Only time will tell what will happen, but at least as it stands now, a national uniform curricula is out of sight. Thank you very much for your patience. Allah Hafiz.